They say the screams could be heard 3 miles away that night in 1801. A plantation owner, trapped in his own bedroom, pounding on doors he himself had barred shut. Outside, a woman stood watching the flames climb higher, her face lit by the fire that consumed everything she'd been forced to build. This is the story of Felipa, a mother, a slave, and the woman who made a monster pay the ultimate price. What drives a human soul to cross that final line? Stay with me, and you'll understand why. Some vengeance burns hotter than any flame. If this story already gave you goosebumps, imagine what's still to come. Click subscribe now, activate the bell so you don't miss anything. The Louisiana heat pressed down on Oakmere Plantation like a suffocating hand that August morning. Felipa wiped sweat from her brow as she bent over the cotton rows, her fingers moving with the mechanical precision of 20 years in bondage. At 43, her hands were calloused, her back permanently curved, from decades of labor, but her eyes, those eyes still held something Master Edmund Pritchard had never managed to break. Her daughter Josefa worked 3 rows over, humming softly. 16 years old, with her mother's high cheekbones and her grandmother's gentle spirit, Felipa allowed herself a rare smile watching the girl. Josefa was everything good that had survived in this hell, everything worth protecting. Before we continue, if stories of resistance and survival move you like they move me, hit that like button and subscribe. You'll want to follow where this goes, I promise you that. The plantation bell rang out, sharp and commanding. Felipa's stomach dropped. Mid-morning bells meant only one thing. Master Pritchard wanted something, and nothing good ever came from his summons. She found him on the main house veranda, sprawled in his chair with that particular looseness that meant he'd been drinking since dawn. Colonel Thaddeus Morrison sat across from him, a 70-year-old widower from the neighboring Westbrook estate, his rheumy eyes already fixed on the slave quarters below. "Felipa!" Pritchard's voice was thick, slurred. "Fetch your girl, Josefa, now!" Every maternal instinct screamed danger. Felipa had learned to read the signs, the particular glint in white men's eyes, the way they leaned forward when discussing human property. She'd seen this transaction play out before, had heard the stories whispered by Felicia and the other women in the quarters after. "Dark. Master, she's needed in the fields today, the cotton—" "Did I ask about the goddamn cotton?" Pritchard lurched forward, whiskey sloshing from the glass in his hand. "Get the girl. Morrison here wants to inspect the merchandise." The word hit Felipa like a physical blow. Merchandise. Her baby. Her Josefa. 20 minutes later, Josefa stood on the veranda, confusion and fear warring in her young face. Morrison circled her like a buyer at a horse auction, his gnarled fingers reaching out to touch her arm, her hair. Felipa's fingernails dug crescents into her palms. "How much?" Morrison's voice was a dry rasp. Pritchard laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "For prime breeding stock? Young, strong, untouched?" He paused, swirling his whiskey. "I'm thinking, let's call it even trade, that bottle of French brandy you've been bragging about." The world tilted. Felipa felt her knees weaken. A bottle. He was trading her daughter for a bottle of liquor. "Master Pritchard, please." The words tore from her throat. "Please, not Josefa. Take me. I'll work double. I'll—" The backhand caught her across the mouth, splitting her lip. She tasted copper and rage. "One more word, and you'll watch from the whipping post," Pritchard hissed. Then, louder, "Morrison, we have a deal. She's yours come sundown. I'll have her brought to Westbrook myself." As the 2 men shook hands, sealing her daughter's fate over bourbon and business, something fundamental shifted inside Felipa. She'd survived 2 decades by bending, by enduring, by swallowing her pride and her pain. She'd watched friends sold, children ripped from mother's arms, dignity stripped away piece by piece. She'd told herself that survival was resistance, that living was winning. But there are some prices too high to pay, some lines that once crossed change everything. Josefa was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face as she tried to understand what was happening. Felipa caught her daughter's eyes and saw Her own fear reflected back. In that moment, looking at her child's face, Felipa made a decision that would turn Oakmere Plantation into a legend of vengeance. That night, Morrison would not be collecting his purchase. Master Pritchard would not be drinking his French brandy, and Felipa would no longer be the woman who bent and survived. She would become something else entirely. Sebastião the blacksmith had always said that iron wasn't the hardest thing on the plantation. It was the human spirit when pushed too far. Felipa was about to prove him right. Can you imagine this scene? He now comments, "No mother should have to go through this." The afternoon sun beat mercilessly on Felipa's back as she returned to the cotton fields, but she barely felt it. Her mind was racing, calculating, planning. She had until sundown, maybe 6 hours, to do the impossible. Bento noticed first. The old man had been on Oakmere longer than anyone, his white hair and scarred back testaments to 40 years of survival. He worked his way down the road toward Felipa, his movements casual to any watching eyes. "I heard," he said quietly, not looking at her. "Whole quarter heard. Felicia's already weeping in the cookhouse." Felipa's hands never stopped moving through the cotton bolls. "I need your help. Woman, don't do nothing foolish. They'll kill you. They'll kill all of us. They've already killed us, Bento. Every day we wake up in chains, we're dead. But Josefa," her voice cracked, "she still has a chance at something. Anything. I won't let that monster touch her." Bento was silent for a long moment. Then, "What do you need?" "Lamp oil. As much as you can get from the tool shed. And I need you to make sure Sebastião keeps that back door to the smokehouse unlocked tonight. Felipa, and I need you to get Josefa out. When it starts, you take her and you run. There's that old priest, Father McKenna, 10 miles north. He helps runaways sometimes. You get her there." Bento's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Sweet Jesus, woman, I'm going to make sure Edmund Pritchard never sells another child." Her voice was flat, calm. The decision had been made. There was no fear left, only purpose. The next hours moved like a dream. Felipa worked mechanically, her body performing tasks it had done 10,000 times, while her mind walked through every step of what was to come. She'd cleaned Pritchard's bedroom every week for 15 years. She knew every floorboard, every window, every lock. She knew he always drank himself unconscious by midnight. She knew he barred his door from the inside, paranoid about slave uprisings. She knew the house was wood, old wood, dry from decades of Louisiana summers. She knew exactly what would happen when fire met that timber. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky blood red, Felipa made her way to the cookhouse. Felicia was there, preparing the master's supper, her face swollen from crying. "I can't believe this is happening," Felicia whispered. "That sweet girl. And for liquor, just liquor." Felipa embraced her friend. "Listen to me carefully. Tonight, after you serve dinner, you go to the quarters and you stay there. Don't come out, no matter what you hear. You understand?" Felicia pulled back, searching Felipa's face. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago." At dusk, Pritchard summoned Josefa to the main house for final inspection before transfer. Felipa watched. Her daughter walk up those steps, saw the old man's hands on her shoulders, and felt the last remnants of doubt evaporate. She waited 2 hours, long enough for Pritchard to finish his bottle, for the house slaves to be dismissed, for darkness to settle over Oakmere like a shroud. Bento appeared at her cabin door, a cloth bundle in his hands. 3 bottles of lamp oil. "Best I could do. Sebastião says the door's unlocked, and he'll meet you by the old oak after." He paused. "You sure about this?" Felipa took the bundle. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Then God have mercy on us all." She moved through the darkness like a ghost. 43 years of navigating this plantation by moonlight, guiding her steps. The main house loomed ahead, most windows dark. Only Pritchard's bedroom showed light, a single candle, probably guttering beside his bed as he lay in drunken stupor. Sebastião was waiting by the smokehouse, his massive blacksmith's frame barely visible in shadow. "Felipa, there's still time to—" "Is Josefa safe?" Bento's got her hidden in the root cellar, but after this, you know what they'll do to everyone here. They'll assume we all helped. Then you better start running too, all of you. Tell them Felipa went mad with grief. Tell them whatever keeps you alive. But I'm done caring what they think." She pressed the lamp oil bottles into his hands. "1 hour, then you get everyone out who wants to go. Head north, scatter, survive." Sebastian looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Your daughter's going to remember you as a hero." "I don't care about being a hero. I just care about her being free." The back entrance to the main house opened silently. Years of Felipa's own maintenance ensuring the hinges never squeaked. She climbed the servants' stairs, her footsteps muffled by carpet she'd beaten clean 1,000 times. Pritchard's door was barred from inside, just as she'd known it would be. But the door to the adjoining study wasn't. She'd deliberately left that lock broken 3 weeks ago, telling the master it was waiting on parts from New Orleans. Every mother would understand what Felipa did. If you would also protect your child with your own life, comment, "I would protect it until the end." Felipa stood in the study, lamp oil bottles heavy in her hands, listening to Edmund Pritchard's drunken snores through the connecting wall. This room, with its ledgers documenting human sales, its maps marking property that included people, its very air thick with the stench of bourbon and entitlement, represented everything that had stolen her life. Now it would become his tomb. She worked methodically, the way she'd worked cotton fields for 20 years, poured the first bottle along the baseboards, watching the oil seep into wood so dry it practically begged for flame. The second bottle she splashed across the curtains, the desk, the leather chairs where Pritchard counted his money while people starved in the quarters. The third bottle she saved. Tenta novamente continue editar. The connecting door between the study and Pritchard's bedroom was locked, but Felipa had the key. She'd stolen it months ago. A small act of resistance she'd never expected to use. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned it, the soft click impossibly loud in the silence. Pritchard lay sprawled across his 4-poster bed, mouth open, one arm dangling off the side. The empty brandy bottle, Morrison's payment for. Josefa sat on the nightstand. Felipa stared at it, feeling rage crystallize in her chest like ice despite the August heat. This was what her daughter's innocence was worth to him. 12 ounces of French liquor. She uncorked the final bottle and began her work. Oil soaked into the bedsheets, the expensive carpet, the mahogany furniture that had been purchased with money earned from flesh and blood. Pritchard stirred once, mumbling something incoherent, but didn't wake. The alcohol had him. A deep. Good. She wanted him to wake, but not yet. When the last drops were gone, Felipa returned to the study and pulled out the small tinderbox she'd taken from the cookhouse. Her hands were steady now. Everything was clear. She thought of Josefa's face, tear-stained on the veranda. She thought of her own mother, sold away when Felipa was 7. She thought of every woman who'd vanished into some master's bedroom and emerged broken. She thought of 20 years of swallowed rage, and she struck the flint. The spark caught the oil-soaked curtains instantly. Flames raced up the fabric like living things, eager and hungry. Within seconds, the study was ablaze, fire spreading across the floor toward Pritchard's bedroom with terrible purpose. Felipa walked calmly to the bedroom door, the one that opened to the hallway, the one Pritchard always barred from the inside. She turned the key in that lock too, then pocketed it. The windows were barred on the outside. Pritchard's own paranoia about break-ins. He'd created his own prison. Now he would burn in it. The heat was building, smoke beginning to fill the air. Pritchard coughed, then coughed again. His eyes opened, confused, still drunk. Then he smelled the smoke. "What?" He sat up, saw the flames crawling through the study doorway, reaching for his bedroom with orange fingers. "Fire! Fire!" Felipa stood in the doorway between the rooms, flames framing her like a portrait. Their eyes met. "You," Pritchard croaked, comprehension dawning. "You did this, you..." He lunged from the bed toward her, but the lamp oil on the floor ignited beneath his feet. He stumbled back, flames licking at his nightshirt. "Where's the key?" he screamed, running to the hall door, yanking the handle. "Where's the goddamn key?" Felipa pulled it from her pocket, held it up so he could see it clearly. Then she threw it into the center of the inferno that had been his study. "My daughter," she said quietly, her voice somehow cutting through his. "Screams. Her name is Josefa. Remember that name while you burn." Pritchard threw himself at the door, pounding, screaming for help. But Felipa knew the servants' quarters were far enough away that by the time anyone heard, it would be too late. She'd planned for that. The fire was spreading fast now, faster than she'd anticipated. The heat was unbearable. Pritchard had given up on the door and was trying the windows, pulling desperately at bars he'd installed himself. "Please!" His voice had changed, gone from commanding to begging. "The key! Give me the key! I'll free her! I'll free all of you! I swear it!" Felipa had heard masters make promises before. She'd seen them broken just as quickly. She said nothing. "I'm burning! Oh God, I'm burning! Help me!" His nightshirt had caught fire. He was batting at the flames, spinning, screaming. The smell was horrific. Burning fabric, burning wood, and underneath it all, burning flesh. Felipa turned away. She'd seen enough. She'd wanted him to know, to understand what he'd done, to feel a fraction of the terror Josefa had felt. That was done now. She moved through the study, the flames parting before her like a miracle, though she knew it was just the path she'd deliberately left open. The back stairs were still clear. She could hear shouting now from outside. Someone had seen the flames. She reached the servant entrance and paused, looking back. The entire upper floor was ablaze. Pritchard's screams had stopped. In their place was only the roar of fire consuming everything he'd built on stolen lives. Sebastião was waiting outside, eyes wide with horror and awe. "Sweet Jesus, Felipa, you really did it. Joseph? Safe. Bento's got her in the woods, but we need to go. Now, they'll come for you. Let them come." But Sebastião grabbed her arm. "You didn't do this for revenge alone. You did it so she could be free. That means you need to run. You need to survive long enough to see her free." He was right. Felipa let him pull her toward the tree line, toward where Bento waited with her daughter. Behind them, Oakmere Plantation burned like a beacon, flames reaching toward the night sky. Other slaves were emerging from the quarters now, faces illuminated by firelight. No one tried to save Pritchard. No one even attempted to fetch water. They simply watched, and in their silence was a judgment centuries overdue. Felicia appeared at Felipa's side as they reached the woods. "Go," she whispered. "We'll tell them you died. In the fire, we'll say you were inside cleaning when it started. They'll believe it. Why wouldn't they? Who would think a slave capable of this?" Felipa embraced her friend one last time. Then she ran into the darkness, toward her daughter, toward whatever came next. She burned down the empire that enslaved her, but what came next? Comment on your theory. And if your heart raced listening to this click like now, the woods swallowed them whole. Felipa ran through darkness so complete she couldn't see her own hands, following only the sound of Sebastião's breathing ahead and the iron grip of Bento's hand pulling her forward. Branches tore at her face and arms, roots tried to trip her, but she didn't slow down. Behind them, the glow of burning Oakmere lit the sky like a second sunset. They ran for what felt like hours before Sebastião finally stopped in a small clearing. Josefa was there, crouched beneath an oak tree, her face streaked with tears. When she saw Felipa, she launched herself into her mother's arms. "Mama, what happened? Bento said there was a fire, that we had to run." "Hush, baby." Felipa held her daughter tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the rapid beat of her heart. Alive, safe, that was all that mattered. "We're leaving this place, all of us. We're going north. There'll be hunters by sunrise," Bento said grimly. He was breathing hard, his old legs struggling with the pace. "Pritchard's brother owns the county sheriff. They'll have dogs out, men with guns. They'll check every road north." Sebastião crouched down, thinking. "Then we don't take roads. We follow the creek beds, move through water when we can. Dogs can't track through water. Father McKenna, Felipa said. You mentioned him, Bento. Can we trust him? The old man nodded slowly. He's helped others. Quakers, abolitionists. They got routes set up. Underground railroad, they call it. But it's 10 miles through swamp and woods, and they'll be hunting us hard. A new voice spoke from the darkness. Then we split up. Felicia emerged from the trees, followed by 3 others from the quarters, 2 men named Thomas and Jacob, and a young woman named Mary. They all carried bundles, hastily packed belongings. Felicia, what are you doing here? Felipa asked. You think I'm staying after this? After watching that monster burn? Felicia's voice was fierce. Half the quarter's running. They saw what you did, Felipa. They saw you stand up. Now they're ready to stand up. 2. They'll hunt all of us, Sebastian warned. Then we make them work for it, Thomas said. He was a young man, barely 20, but his eyes were hard. We split into groups, different directions. They can't chase everyone. Bento pulled out a scrap of cloth with crude markings. I've been planning this for years, never had the courage to run, but I listened to every story, every whisper about the routes north. Thomas and Jacob, you take Mary and head northwest toward the Atchafalaya. There's sympathizers near the Bayou Teche. He pointed to another marking. Felicia, you're small and fast. You go alone, move quick through the high ground east. Make for Baton Rouge. There's a free black community there that might shelter you. And us? Felipa asked. You, Josefa, Sebastian and me, we go north to McKenna, straight shot through the worst of the swamp. It's the hardest route, but it's the one they'll least expect. They'll think you'd avoid the swamp with a child. They divided what little they had. A knife, some dried meat Felicia had stolen from the cookhouse, a flint and a water skin. It wasn't much to start a new life with, but it was more than most runaways had. As the group prepared to separate, Felipa pulled Felicia aside. Thank you for everything. Felicia grabbed her hands. You burned down hell tonight, sister. You gave us all permission to believe we could be free. That's worth more than thanks. The group split, melting into the darkness in different directions. Felipa watched them go, hoping they'd all make it, knowing some wouldn't. Freedom was never free. Mama, I'm scared, Josefa whispered as they began their trek north. I know, baby, so am I. But being scared and being brave aren't opposites. You can be both. The swamp welcomed them with mosquitoes, thick humidity, and water that sucked at their feet with every step. Bento led the way, his decades of knowledge about the land proving invaluable. He knew which plants were safe to eat, which water was drinkable, where to step to avoid sinking. By dawn, they'd covered maybe 3 miles. Exhaustion pulled at Felipa's bones, but she didn't stop. Behind them, faintly, she could hear dogs baying. They're coming, Sebastian said unnecessarily. How far to McKenna's? Felipa asked. 7 miles, maybe 8. Bento was breathing hard. But we can't keep this pace, not through the day. Then we find somewhere to hide and rest, move again at dusk. They found a partially hollow cypress tree, its roots creating a small cave-like space above the waterline. They wedged themselves inside. 4 people pressed together in darkness that smelled of rot and earth. The dogs got closer. Voices carried across the water, white voices, angry voices. Felipa heard Pritchard's name, heard the word murder, heard promises of what they'd do when they caught the ones responsible. Josefa trembled against her mother's side. Felipa wrapped her arms around her daughter, covering her ears as the search party passed within 50 yards of their hiding spot. We should have killed more of them, Sebastian whispered when the sounds finally faded. All those years of taking their beatings, their abuse. We should have burned down the whole county. Revenge doesn't end, Bento said quietly. It just makes more ghosts. What Felipa did, that wasn't revenge, that was justice. There's a difference. Is there? Sebastian challenged. Yes, Felipa said firmly. Revenge would have been burning him for the sake of pain. Justice was burning him so Josefa could be free. One is about the past, the other is about the future. They waited until nightfall before moving again. Josefa was flagging, her young legs struggling with the terrain. Sebastião carried her on his back for stretches, his blacksmith's strength keeping them moving when Felipa's own legs threatened to give out. On the second night, they found their first sign of hope, a mark carved into a tree trunk, subtle but unmistakable, an X, with a line through it, the signal of the Underground Railroad. "We're close," Bento breathed. "McKenna's church is near." But so were the hunters. The dogs had picked up the scent again. Felipa could hear them, closer now, more insistent. "Run," Bento said suddenly. "I'll lead them off." "Bento, no. I'm 70 years old, Felipa. I'm slowing you down, and we both know it. You get that girl to freedom. That's all that matters now." He pressed something into her hand, a small wooden cross. "Give this to McKenna. He'll know you're real." Before anyone could stop him, the old man crashed through the underbrush heading east, making as much noise as possible. The dogs immediately veered toward the sound. Tears streamed down Felipa's face, but she didn't stop running. Bento had bought them time. She wouldn't waste his sacrifice. "Some are born free. Others have to set fire to hell to be free. And you? What would you do to guarantee the freedom of your family?" Comments. "Freedom is worth any sacrifice." Father Patrick McKenna's church was barely more than a shack with a cross, hidden so deep in the Louisiana wilderness that even most locals didn't know it existed. But for those who needed it, it was sanctuary. Felipa, Sebastião, and Josefa stumbled into the clearing just before dawn on their third day of running. Felipa's feet were bloody, her dress torn to rags, but she was still moving, still protecting her daughter. The priest emerged before they reached the door, a weathered Irishman with kind eyes and hands that had clearly worked soil as often as they'd held prayer books. He took in their condition with one glance. "Inside, quickly." The church's interior was sparse but clean. McKenna ushered them through a false panel behind the altar into a hidden room barely large enough for the three of them to stand. "How many are chasing you?" he asked. "At least a dozen," Sebastião answered. "Maybe more. Dogs, too." McKenna nodded grimly. "Then they'll be here within the hour. I can hide you, but I can't fight them off if they decide to search thoroughly." Felipa pulled out Bento's cross. "An old man named Bento said you'd help us. He led the dogs away so we could make it here." The priest's face softened. "I knew Bento. Helped 3 families escape over the years, but he never ran himself. Said he was too old." He took the cross reverently. If he gave this up, then he knew it was his last act. "Can you help us?" Felipa's voice cracked. "My daughter. We're going to... I know. I've heard too many stories like yours." McKenna pulled a trapdoor in the floor, revealing a tunnel. "This leads to a bayou inlet. There's a boat hidden there. Follow the waterway north for 2 days. You'll reach a farm owned by Samuel and Ruth Morrison, no relation to the bastard who tried to buy your girl. They're Quakers. They'll hide you and get you further north." "What about you?" Josefa asked, speaking for the first time since they'd arrived. "I'll be fine, child. They can't prove I helped you, and I've had practice looking innocent." He smiled, but his eyes were worried. "Now go, quickly." They were halfway down the tunnel when they heard the dogs. The sounds that followed would haunt Felipa for the rest of her life. Men shouting, McKenna's calm voice claiming ignorance, the crash of furniture being overturned. Then a gunshot and silence. Sebastião grabbed Felipa's arm as she started to turn back. He knew the risk. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless. They found the boat exactly where McKenna had said it would be. A small flatboat, barely seaworthy, but enough. As Sebastião pushed them into the current, Felipa looked back one last time at the smoke rising from the church. 2 deaths now, Bento and McKenna. Both so she and Josefa could have a chance at freedom. The next 2 days blurred together. Endless water, endless fear, endless paddling. They ate raw fish Sebastião caught with his bare hands. They huddled together when thunderstorms rolled through. They didn't speak much, saving their energy for survival. On the 3rd morning, they found the Morrison farm. Ruth Morrison answered their knock, a sturdy woman in plain grey dress, her face lined but gentle. She took one look at them and pulled them inside without a word. "Samuel," she called, "we have guests." Within an hour, they were fed, cleaned and hidden in a root cellar beneath the barn. The Morrisons asked no questions, offered no judgment. They simply helped, as they'd helped hundreds before. "How far can you get us?" Felipa asked. "There's a network," Samuel explained, his voice heavily accented with German. "We pass you to the next station, they pass you to the next, all the way to Canada, if that's where you want to go." "Canada?" Josefa's eyes widened. "Is that far?" "Very far, child, but it's where slavery can't touch you, where you're truly free." That night, as Josefa slept between them, Felipa and Sebastião talked in whispers. "What will you do?" Sebastião asked. "In Canada? Live?" Felipa said simply. "Raise my daughter somewhere she can be, whoever she wants to be. Maybe I'll tell our story, so people know what we endured, what it cost. They'll make you a legend, you know. The woman who burned Oakmere, the slave who killed her master and escaped." Felipa shook her head. "I don't want to be a legend. I just want to be free." But even as she said it, she knew Sebastião was right. The story was already spreading. She'd heard whispers of it at the Morrison farm. Slaves throughout Louisiana were talking about the woman who'd fought back, who'd made a master pay the ultimate price. Some called her a hero. Some called her a monster. Felipa didn't care what they called her, as long as Josefa was safe. 3 months later, they crossed into Canada. Felipa stood at the border, Josefa's hand in hers, and breathed free air for the first time in 43 years. Sebastião stood beside them, tears streaming down his scarred face. They'd lost Bento. They'd lost McKenna. They'd lost Felicia somewhere along the route, separated during a close call with slave catchers. They'd lost so much, but they'd gained something too. Something Felipa had never thought she'd have. A future. She thought about Edmund Pritchard sometimes, in the quiet moments. Thought about his screams, the smell of burning flesh, the look in his eyes when he realized she'd won. She felt no guilt, only certainty that she'd done what needed to be done. Josefa grew, up free in a small Canadian town, never knowing the chains her mother had worn. She became a teacher, educated dozens of children, and lived to see the 13th Amendment end slavery in the United States. Sebastião opened a blacksmith shop, using his skills to build rather than serve. He never married, but he was never alone. The community of former slaves looked after their own. And Felipa, she wrote down her story, every word, every detail, not for fame or glory, but so her grandchildren would know, so they'd understand the price of their freedom. The legend of Felipa spread throughout the South, the slave who burned her master alive and escaped to freedom. Some versions said she was 10 feet tall, breathing fire. Others claimed she had mystical powers, that God himself had protected her. The truth was simpler and more powerful. She was a mother who refused to let her child be destroyed. She was a woman who decided that some evils deserved to burn. She was a human being who chose freedom over safety, justice over survival. And on August 23rd, 1801, she lit a fire that never truly went out. The flames that consumed Oakmere Plantation burned in the hearts of every slave who heard the story. They burned in the minds of abolitionists who used her tale to fuel their cause. They burned through the South like a warning: push people far enough, take too much, and eventually they push back. Edmund Pritchard thought he could trade a child for liquor and face no consequences. He was wrong. Felipa made sure the world knew what happened when monsters forgot that their victims were human. She made sure that her daughter's name, Josefa, would be remembered alongside her own. And she made sure that some fires, once lit, burn forever in the memory of those who believe that freedom is worth any price. This was Felipa's story, a mother's rage, a daughter's salvation, and a fire that changed everything. What will you remember most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's never forget the price of freedom.